Good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Supply ME Capital PLC Annual General Meeting for the year ended 31st of December 2019. Throughout this meeting, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time via the Q&A tab situated on the right-hand corner of your screen. Please simply just type in your question and press send. Given the significant number of investors attending today's AGM, the company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it's appropriate to do so. These will be available via the Investor Meet Company dashboard, and we will send you an email to notify you when they are ready for your review. I'd also like to remind you that this meeting is being recorded. Before we begin, we'd just like to float out a quick poll. This is not a regulatory poll, it's just to give the company an idea of those on this meeting. And I'd now like to hand over, if I may, to Dominic White, Chairman of Supply ME Capital PLC. Good morning to you, Dominic.
Morning, thank you very much, and good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Dominic White, the Non-Executive Chairman of Supply ME Capital PLC. This is the 2019 Annual General Meeting. The time is 9:01 and I declare the meeting open. We're going to turn off the cameras now so we can bring up the slides, and I'll do a brief introduction and then we'll go to the main business of the meeting. Alessandra, I think your camera's on still. Thank you. So the formal business of our meeting will be the passing of the resolutions. We will then have a brief review of the key events of 2019, hear the finance overview from Martin, the Chief Executive's review from Alessandro, and a selection of the main questions that have come through the platform from the shareholders. It won't be possible, as we just said at the start, to answer all of the questions because there won't be time, but we will respond to those in writing and they'll appear on the platform after the meeting and will be sent to you by email. It won't be possible to answer questions which would require us to provide confidential and inside information which is not public clearly. On to the main business of the meeting. The quorum necessary to constitute this annual general meeting is 2 members present in person or by proxy and entitled to vote. This quorum is present. Moving to the resolutions, I propose to take the notice and resolutions as read. You have a copy of them and they are now on the slide in front of us. Resolutions 1 to 5 are proposed as ordinary resolutions and they require a simple priority to be passed. Resolution 6 is proposed as a special resolution, which to be passed requires a majority of 75% to vote in favour of the resolution. The results of votes cast in advance by proxy are as follows, and Stuart, I'll hand over to you to run through them.
Dominic, thank you. So as mentioned, there are 6 resolutions, 5 of which are ordinary resolutions, the final one being a special resolution. You will see these listed on the screen. I will read each of them out in turn and then present the results. Given the volume of shares in issuance, I will round some of the numbers for more ease of presentation, but you have the official results in front of you. So resolution 1, being an ordinary resolution, is to receive the annual report and accounts for the financial year ended 31st of December 2019, together with the Director's report, Strategic report, and the Auditor's report. Votes in favour amounted to 10.4 billion, votes against 710,000, and votes withheld 14.96 million, which would allow the resolution to be passed. Resolution 2, similarly being an ordinary resolution, to approve the Director's remuneration report for the financial year ended 31st of December 2019. Votes in favour 10.4 billion, votes against 4.4 million, and votes withheld 14.2 million. Resolution 3, again, an ordinary resolution to appoint Crowe UK LLP as auditors of the company. Votes in favour 10.4 billion, votes against 760,000, and votes withheld 15 million. Resolution 4, to authorise the directors to determine the amount of the auditor's remuneration. An ordinary resolution which votes in favour of amount to 10.4 billion, votes against 3.1 million, and votes withheld 13.7 million. The final ordinary resolution being to authorise the directors to allot shares in the company. Votes in favour being 10.3 billion, votes against 76 million, and votes withheld 1.6 million. Our special resolution to authorise the directors to allot equity securities in accordance with section 560, clause 1 of the Companies Act 2006. In favour, 10.3 billion, votes against 76.8 million, and votes withheld 1.6 million. So that concludes the presentation of the results of the resolutions, and this would see all of the resolutions pass. Dominic, I pass back to you for formal confirmation of that.
Thanks very much, Stuart. Just worth noting that as there are no shareholders present who have not voted in advance by proxy, and because no shareholder present at the meeting location has indicated they wish to amend their votes as submitted by proxy in advance, I can confirm that each resolution has been duly passed. And I can declare at this point that this formal part of the AGM is closed and the time is 9:07. These results will be announced by RNS and on the company's website shortly after the closing of the rest of this meeting. Moving on to the second part of the meeting, I'll give a brief overview of the main events of 2019, and then I'll hand over to Martin, who will talk through the financials for this period. For the benefit of shareholders who do not know the history of the company, there were three key events in 2019. Firstly, Imaginatic, the name of the company at that time, sold its underlying software business in February 2019 and changed its name to Able Group PLC. This transaction meant that it became a non-trading cash share on AIM under AIM Rule 15. Secondly, in September 2019, Able announced that it had signed a conditional agreement to acquire the whole of SupplyMe SRL. The transaction completed in March 2020 by way of a reverse takeover, and Able changed its name to ME Capital PLC. Lastly, to align all the group companies' financial year ends, SupplyMe changed its accounting reference date to 31st of December, resulting in the shortening of the company's accounting period to 31st of December 2019, and hence the need for this set of accounts and this annual general meeting. Whilst on this point, I note that the AGM for the accounts to 31st of December 2020 will be held by the end of June. I'll now hand over to Martin, who will comment on the financials for the period to December 2019.
Thank you, Dominic. Good morning, everybody. The financial information that you have in front of you reflects a company which has really been superseded. And so the first thing I would like to point out that this set of financial statements is very much for the record only. Current management had no input or involvement in the activities to which these financial results relate. So we are unable to give you further commentary other than to say that the turnover was 0, the losses were about 0.7 million. However, that doesn't impact the company going forward. Instead, the chairman has asked me to respond to one of our shareholder questions, which is why are we holding the AGM to approve the 2019 accounts only now? So this stems from a management decision made in the third quarter of last year to adopt a 31st of December accounting reference date. As we had already extended the company's reporting date from March to September, we could not extend it further, but it was permissible to shorten it. So a 9-month period to 31st of December 2019 had to be inserted. And these are the accounts that have been presented to you today. So the first question to respond to is, why did we make that decision? So there were three main drivers. First, the accounting reference date of the group's main operating subsidiary was the 31st of December. And it became clear that to adapt the subsidiary to the 30th of September reporting would be very time-consuming, very inefficient and costly. For example, it would have meant auditing 3 financial years to confirm the results for the 18 months to the 30th of September 2020, and involve a great deal of manual analysis. Meanwhile, the PLC, which was a clean slate with only a handful of transactions, could very easily be adapted to a 31st of December year end. Secondly, a single accounting reference date across the group was obviously always going to streamline our reporting processes considerably. And so we wanted to target one particular accounting reference date. And what we have seen is that the most typical reporting period across the business geographies we're interested in is the calendar year. Finally, by reverting to a December year end with this set of 2019 reports, which include only able numbers, we make a clear distinction between the old company and the new. The 2020 results, which, as we announced, we shall be releasing during May with an AGM in June, will have an income statement that is exclusively Supply Me Capital. A lot of work was required as we had to prepare both the 2019 annual report and a new set of June 2020 interims, which we wanted to issue immediately after the audit. This was concluded and announced in January 2021. And as you will be aware, we triggered a technical breach of stock exchange timing rules on financial reporting. So we applied for a suspension, which was lifted on the 9th of March. As you can imagine, the board did not want to call an AGM whilst the shares were suspended. So the AGM notice went out shortly after the suspension was lifted, which is why we find ourselves here today. I'll hand back to Dominic. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. Alessandra, for an overview of operations and strategic direction.
Thank you, Dominic. It's a pleasure. Yes, we would like to recap the overview of the market where Supply Me now is operating, and what we saw is starting by our first assumptions that the COVID has had a very important impact in the supply chain and inventory management of each company. So the key message is that we are moving from the just-in-time to the just-in-case inventory management. And this is a key point, a very important point, looking at our business model that basically is based to monetize the inventory that is on premises or in transit. In the perspective of the company, is an opportunity to free up cash. And the environment, the market opportunities for Supply Me is to work not as a competitor of banks, because banks are not promoting any similar facility, but work, as you know, alongside banks. Banks for us are partner. Is the reason because we think that now the market, and also typically a bank, can't promote or deliver an inventory monetization facility that basically is a commercial facility. The technology is very important, and this is one of our competitive advantage, combined to our innovative, novel legal and accounting contracts. And we think that technology will help the business and also the companies to create a trusted data environment, and also to give more value to stock that are on premises, on transit. And this is the headroom, this is the space where Supply Me want and now is working. The untapped market is huge, and recently we saw a potential partner that explained that the locked value in a supply chain is nearly 40 trillion of dollars. Our estimates focus on inventory as very huge, 2 trillion nearly in Europe, 1 trillion US, 50 billion in UAE. And so if you think that we can add this untapped market to the more huge trade finance, supply chain finance market, always focus on a non-credit approach, that is the big difference of SupplyMe, we think that we are in for a very great, interesting period. If you can move to this next slide, please. Okay. For shareholders and non-shareholders, this is a very important graphical slide where we can and we highlight where SupplyMe is now focused on the inventories. There are not facilities in the market that basically can fund the inventory, the so-named days inventory held, DIH. The alternative for a company is the cost of equity, is the equity injection, because our business model, the platform, is not managing receivables, payables, like other business model. The novel, and also the reason because we are educating investors, is that our underlying is inventory. And the key point is that also in the next normal phase after COVID or during the COVID, the days inventory held is the key point, the key performance indicator that for a company is also in the perspective of CFO in a company is the key point that a CFO has to manage. We can move on the next slide, please. The three pillars and the three key value of SupplyMe are that basically the concept of the platform is not only focused on technology. The market know that we created a new product, and as a new product, our intellectual properties, our knowledge, our know-how is also our competitive advantage is made of three pillars. The first one is the proprietary legal framework. The second one is the technology that allow basically to work through a digital workplace to buy, purchase the inventories, create digital certificates, create legal binding digital certificates, and in a perspective of investors, the so-named inventory funders, this is a new asset class. The new asset class is also the reason because we spent times in order to educate inventory funders to try to sell our underlyings that is made of several mitigants. We are not selling a credit insurance rating in order to foster our notes, our securitization. We would like to sell, to explain to our investor base, that is a global investor base, that SupplyMe is actually a new asset class made of several mitigants that is gaining traction from our experience in regulatory, internal control, technology, and capital markets. The companies are happy to use our service, as we know, and the funders has to be educated in order to understand basically that SupplyMe is fostering new product. SupplyMe is not a marketplace because the SupplyMe, the product is the ownership of the product that is the key value of a company is of SupplyMe. We can move to the next slide, please. We have a very interesting and complex business plan that is made of three streams. The first one is focused on technology because the key questions of our investors is how we assess an inventory and how we track, we monitor inventory. In this area, the technology is very important because, for instance, the Internet of Things, the inventory, the Internet of Inventory, and we named in the last RNS, is a key point in order to create trust, to also explain how our underlying, to be transparent to the capital markets industry, and also to increase our capacity of inventory funding. The second point is the multi-channel funding strategy, the second streams. As the market knows, starting by the reverse takeover, we worked hard in order to have several funding strategies. The first one is the open funding route, and we are working with the Stone Harbor. And the second one is the self-funding that is in place, and we want to create synergies because it's a very powerful route for our opinion. The third one is the captive funding. And the market know that we also tried and we had positive results in order to convert our structure in a Sharia version. And we announced it in January that we took the approval. And this is another important funding route in our opinion. The third point, the third streams, is what we made basically in last year. We prove that our business model is scalable, is global, is also the reason because we quickly open a Middle East geography, UK, we are working on US. We know that the global footprint is basically the footprint of SupplyMe. Is also the reason because we announced the potential acquisition of Trade Flow Capital, that is basically complementary, and also the opportunity for SupplyMe to extend through a global footprint its customer base. And so the business plan is complex, is underway, and in the next financial statements, we also update the market through a qualitative analysis of these streams. We can go ahead. Thank you.
Thanks, Alessandro.
Thanks very much, Alexandro. We now come to the Q&A session of the meeting. We've received a number of questions from shareholders which have been submitted in advance of the AGM, and the vast majority of these fall within 5 categories: funding, origination, trade flow acquisition, the captive bank, and more general market themes. Now, as mentioned already, it's not going to be practicable to answer every single question individually during the AGM. So we've aggregated them under each of the 5 categories, and we will address the most frequently asked questions within each one of these. However, we will endeavour to provide written questions to as many of the individually submitted questions as possible following the meeting, and these will be posted on the Investor Meet platform under the SIME tab and will be available within the next few days. Just to say, in terms of housekeeping, that participants have also been submitting questions during the AGM, and we will again address some of these following the pre-submitted Q&A session. So the first category is funding, and I will hand back to Alessandro to address the 3 questions in this category.
Thank you. Yes, we are pleased to reply to these questions that also the company also tried to explain in the last RNS the progresses. Regarding the first question, firstly, I have to say that in the past, SupplyMe, the history of SupplyMe, that the platform has been tested in Italy with the 2 important banks. So the proof of concept, from our point of view, in the late last years, in particular 2018, 2017, we had the opportunity to work with very important banks in order to test the platform with the existing customer base, 2 important supply chain of our banking partners in Italy. Is also the reason because we move from only a bank partnership to a securitization. And as we stated, the first securitization, the company is confident to complete the first securitization, as we stated in a recent RNS. And also seeing the second question about the inventory monetization transaction to be completed this calendar year, we are very confident to complete the transactions as we stated. And as I'm saying, the self-funding route is a very important route from our point of view, because basically allow partners that typically are banks, not only in the future could be Italian banks, because each geographies could have a partner or a couple of partners that could use our platform to self-fund the platform and to promote that service, this novel and new unique service to their existing customer base. So the self-funding route, firstly, I have to say that is not only an Italian route, but is a route that we can use across several geographies. And yes, we are working with our local Italian banks. And as we stated, we think that the captive bank and basically the captive funding route, we are seeing as very important synergies, and is also the reason because we want to work alongside the captive bank in order also to set up the right way to use the self-funding routes.
Thank you very much, Alessandro. Moving on to the second category on origination. Martin, perhaps you'd like to take this one.
Okay, thank you. Well, clearly the company puts a great deal of emphasis on the onboarding process, and the origination statistics are probably our most fundamental statistic at this point in the process, gross and net. You will have, if you have followed the company's results and RNSs, you will have seen that in our June interim statement that we released actually not very long ago, there was a table presenting the growth of originations. As far as the net originations are concerned, we're literally in the process of compiling the data up to the end of today for the 2020 statutory audit financial accounts. So the audited accounts, which will be coming out shortly, will give you a complete update of gross and gross to net in two tables. So if you can look out for that in the next set of accounts, which will due out shortly. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin. And now on the trade flow acquisition, perhaps I can ask Dominic to just give a quick update on that.
Yeah, no problem, Paul. Well, trade flow, we certainly agree within the business is a very exciting opportunity for us. Adding in inventory in transit to the supply ME operations and services will be a great thing to insert. We're making good progress with the due diligence. We're making good progress with the commercial analysis and the tax analysis. That's drawing closer to an end. We can't quite put a clear timing on the end of it just yet, but we can definitely say we're moving through the transaction process really well and efficiently.
Thank you very much. And moving on to the captive bank, I know, Alessandro, you've mentioned this in your presentation just previously, but perhaps you'd like to just address this specific this question, please.
Yes, thank you. Firstly, we have no any regulatory issues. The time that we are managing, we spent is, as I'm saying, to set up the right configuration, the right framework that allow the captive funding to work quickly. As we stated in the last RNS, we have not to wait the completion of the authorization process in order to start the funding. And the second point is that since it's a bank, it's important that this bank can work efficiently with the other self-funders, the other local partners that basically want to promote the service, want to use our service. Our service is, as we know, a big opportunity for a bank to go to its customer base to say, okay, I have not a credit facility, I have a commercial facility, and so we can support you. So it's important for us to get all the synergies in place, and also obviously, as we stated, to quickly start the captive funding route in order to start the monetization transactions.
Thank you very much. And moving on to market themes, if you could carry on here, please, Alessandro.
Yes, sure. We made I think that we made a very interesting assessment, also thanks to the support of Anthony Brown recently, and we shared to the market through our PR channels. And basically, the comparative analysis that we made with reference not to Greensill, but to the overall supply chain financing, reverse factoring, or sustainability financing, as we can say, is that actually we have three important big differences. The first one is the underlying. As I was saying, Supply Me is a new asset class. We are not securitize receivables, payables, leasing, mortgage. The new asset class is based on inventories, the marketability of inventories, and investors understood definitely that we are a novel model, is also an opportunity to have a diversification of investment. So the first difference is the underlying. So Greensill is focused on the payables, receivables, future receivables, and the Supply Me is focused on inventory. The second important difference is the concentration in the perspective of investors, obviously, is also the reason of the problems of supply chain financing. It's, in my opinion, the supply chain financing business is not scalable because you need to work with the end-to-end supply chain, to work with a single buyer that has to promote the service to thousands and thousands of suppliers. It's very difficult in the commercial side to sell this model to several big buyers, several anchor company of supply chains. And this is the reason, because the result is that the supply chain financing securitization are concentrated on the few names. It's a big difference because Supply Me work with several names, several single name companies with a very interesting diversification on a single name basis, on a sectoral basis, and also geographical basis. It's also the reason because our inventory funder asked us in January to have a global portfolio. It's an opportunity for the investors, for us to have a global, high diversified portfolio. The third difference is, as I'm saying, we are not selling the high rating and a high quality credit scoring of an insurance company. We don't sell the credit rating of insurance companies. We want to sell to our investor, to educate, to explain to our investors that we work in several years to have a very important platform that use the best practice in controls, the best practice in technologies in order to monitor, assess, check the inventory. That is a key value of a company. And being a key value is an important investment opportunity in the perspective of the investor base that now is based by institutionals, but in the future will be, we think that we have the opportunity to work also with family officers, retail maybe, because this novel asset class is an opportunity for investors. And so differently compared to other securitization like Greensill, for instance, we don't want to sell the existence of a full credit insurance that basically is to sell basically selling the credit insurance rating and not the product. We don't see just the last question, please, briefly. We are not seeing any effects. The collapse of Greensill now we assessed also this point, we are not seeing any negative impacts. I think that the collapse of Greensill, unfortunately for Greensill, but educate furthermore the market, and so is also an opportunity to open the light to our model and to understand that in a securitization market, the importance is the transparency of the underlying, and using also blockchain is for Supply.me a further value to create a very transparent marketplace in a perspective of investors.
Thank you very much indeed, Alessandro. Moving on now to some questions that have been submitted during the meeting itself. I think the first one, which is submitted, would be to ask us to, Dominic could introduce each of the individual members that have been presenting today. Dominic, if I could perhaps ask you to do that, and we will all put our cameras on.
Yeah, no problem. Cameras on. There we go. Well, I'll go from left to right on my screen, top left. That's Paul Van, who's for Investor Relations from Walbrook. He's been kindly introducing and managing the Q&A. Then there's Stuart Nelson from Supply.me. He is head of risk management. There's Suzanne, who's a non-exec director. Myself, hello. Dominic is Alessandro, who you know, who's just finished his discussion as CEO. Martin is in charge of the finance team, and Brian is also part of Investor Relations.
Thank you very much indeed, Dominic.
No problem.
And the next question that's been submitted live is from Vivek J, who asks a question: who are the funders for each of the geographic and Sharia areas? Perhaps I could ask Alessandro to take that one, please.
Thank you, Paul. As the market knows, the shareholders know, we are under a strict non-disclosure agreement of the name of inventory funder because we are, as we stated in the last RNS, we are setting up the placing process of the Sharia product, and so we think that we could announce the name after the completion of this setup. The key point is that this inventory funding specialist on Sharia is not the same, is not the inventory funder that now is working with us for the first securitization.
Thank you very much. A question from Oliver P regarding the shareholding structure. What are the main who are the main players within IAF2 and the Avant-Garde Group? That's obviously another one for you, please, Alessandro.
Yes, thank you. I think that Supply.me, in the perspective of shareholders, give the very clear message that the CEO, the founder, has the biggest skin in the game in the company. So when IAF2 merged in the Avant-Garde Group, as we stated in the RNS of 24 December, and the ultimate effective beneficial owner is Alessandro Zamboni.
Thank you very much. And another question here on the geographical spread. Has good progress been made to monetize MENA companies? And if so, is demand likely to increase? And has progress been made in setting up a US hub? Alessandro, please.
Thank you. Yes, MENA regions are a big opportunity in the perspective of the client company's origination, and also recently also thank our inventory funder based on Sharia version. We see a very important interest in the Sharia Islamic finance investments. Yes, MENA and US are two important regions. Also MENA, because the strategic direction of the UAE in particular is to manage and to improve the digitalization of the commodities transaction to the inventory and warehousing servicing. And so Also, the infrastructure around the region is helping our service because, for instance, there is an important hub, the name is DMCC, that is improving technology and services in order to foster the inventory based transaction. This is an important point. For each region, SupplyMe is not only analyzed the commercial potential, but also the infrastructure, how the politics, the local politics wanted to support the companies, and MENA regions, in my opinion, are working very well in order to also create the infrastructures behind the working capital facility, and the inventories is a key point. Also, the Lenovo agreements is pushing the opportunity for us to increase the origination. US is another important region. Anthony Brown is making a great job. We are looking also the completion of the transaction with Reflow Capital, and also to integrate the go-to-market, the offering, because you know that US importers is a big opportunity for SupplyMe to deliver our service to the portfolio of US importers, of portfolio of global US supply chain.
Thank you very much indeed, Alessandro. Thanks to all of those who have submitted questions in advance and during the presentation today. Just remind you that we will be endeavouring to answer as many of these as we possibly can, and they will be posted on the Investor Meet website over the next few days. Perhaps I can now hand back to Dominic to close off proceedings.
Thanks very much, Paul. Well, with that, we've now covered off all the business of this meeting. Thank you to everybody for attending. The results, as I said earlier, right at the start, will be announced in an RNS, and they will be on the company's website later today. There'll also be a recording of the meeting, which will be available on the company's website, and it will be emailed out to all of you as well. And lastly, I would say that assuming we continue with the easing of the COVID restrictions as is planned, we look forward to seeing you all in person, hopefully at the June AGM. Thanks very much.
Dominic, thank you very much indeed, and thank you also to the rest of the management team from Supply at ME Capital. Feedback is important to the company, and we will shortly be redirecting you now for the opportunity to provide your feedback in order that the company can better understand your views and expectations. Thank you once again for all the investors for your time today and for submitting the questions. If I could ask you now, please, not to close this session, as I will now redirect you for the opportunity to provide said feedback. If you access this meeting from our website, then the feedback page will appear. If you access this via the link sent you by email, you'll simply be asked to log back in to provide your feedback. Once again, on behalf of the management team of Supply at ME Capital PLC, I'd like to thank you very much for your time today. That now concludes today's session. Good morning to you all.